Well, welcome to the Great Adventure. I'm going through some great scenery here in Iowa and thinking about what's coming, and wondered if you guys are called to jump in the car with us and go on this adventure with us. We're praying for the best for you. We know that God's going to provide for both of us, and we're looking forward to what God has in store. Hi, I'm Mike Lauderdale, and this is my wife, Jan, and we are introducing ourselves to you, looking for the best that God would have for you. We are praying for you already, and we hope that God brings the very best for your family. We're looking for the family that God would call us to love and to pastor, and so we would solicit your prayers as well as we go through this great adventure together. Well, I'd like to talk to you today about becoming a full throttle Christian. And you may ask, what does that mean? Well, I love motorcycles myself, and love to ride motorcycles. And people that used to ride with me would complain sometimes because my pipes were so very loud. I actually like to tell people that the reason why my pipes are so loud is it was a safety feature. But more than a safety feature, I love to have loud pipes because I wanted people to know that I was coming. I wanted them to be aware of me being there. And so what does it mean to be a full throttle Christian, where people are aware that you're there, where you make a difference in the world around you? Today, we have great advantages being Christians because we have access to great teachers from all over the corporate body of Christ, teachers from all different denominations and all different persuasions. But most recently, I've been thinking about one particular teacher, and I've been examining his life a little bit more carefully and looking again at his theology, which is called kingdom theology. I've been looking at John Wimber. I've been thinking about what was unique about him. I've been thinking about what we can learn from him, about what it means to be a Christian, what it means, what his relationship with God was all about, and what it would mean to have a relationship with God like his was with God. And so there are a couple of resources that I actually used recently in my study of John Wimber, and one is The Way In is the Way On, and the other one was Doing Church. You can purchase both of those yourself, but both of them have been just profoundly influencing my own quiet time in my own spiritual life and the work that God is doing in me right now. And so I wanted to share that with you. Most often I find that the most effective teaching is teaching that is affecting you or has affected you personally, that you can share with someone else. By the way, you can't really share what you don't have. So I'm sharing with you what God is speaking to me in my heart and what God has used John Wimber to teach me most recently. And to understand John's relationship with God and to understand how that can affect us, we first need to look at the history of his radical salvation. John was radically saved. He had what many in the world would think of would be a very successful life. He played in a famous band and played many different musical instruments, and yet he knew that past all that stuff, that there were some serious problems in his life, some things that some shortcomings, some things that were not happening in the way that he would want them to happen. And really, he felt like his life was a catastrophe. And so he got saved. He received Jesus as his Lord and Savior. In fact, I want to read to you what he has to say about that from The Way In is the Way On. He said, "It wasn't about adding a little religion to my life. It was about ending one phase of life in a very real sense." He says that I cut off all considerations of my identity and past and gave myself totally over to Jesus Christ in every way I knew how. I died in 1963. That's pretty powerful. He says, what about you? Have you signed over your life to God? Is he entrusted with the processes and outcomes of your life? This is not primarily a theological discussion, but an active decision and habit of the heart. What we're discovering is that John gave everything to Christ. And in fact, he says that, I did not invite Christ into my life. This is a different posture than the one I am advocating. He says, I gave myself to Jesus. Do you see the difference? This is my understanding of the proposition. I was to abandon the pursuit of my own personal life, and that was total commitment. And so the first thing that we can learn from all of these great teachers, and especially John Wimber that we're talking about right now, is their total commitment to God. I mean, that's really what moves us about their life, is that what they gave up, that they gave up their agenda, what was important to them for a greater cause, the cause of Christ. And it's inspirational to us. It encourages us. And that is the call of God to each and every Christian, that we all abandon ourselves and what we think is important for what he thinks is important. And that is, in reality, the kingdom coming on earth as it is in heaven. Do you see the difference there between receiving Jesus and giving your life to Jesus? Not just merely intellectually acquiescing to an idea, but giving your whole heart, your whole life, your future, everything you got, your guts, giving it all to Christ. Do you see the difference? And sometimes I'm afraid that particular attitude of just receiving Christ, of making an intellectual decision, has kept the church from growing and from being effective in our world today. Many people in the world think that there's not much difference between the actions of Christians, those that call themselves Christians, and those in the world. Why? Because we haven't given up everything. We haven't, like John said, died so that Christ could live in us. Like John the Baptist said, I must decrease so that he might increase. We haven't really gained that concept. And I feel that in order for us to be effective in what God is calling us to do and to minister to this generation, we indeed are going to have to take that next step from just mental assent to believing in Jesus, to giving our whole heart and our whole life to Him. Now, today I'd like to talk a little bit more about the implications of total commitment or lack of it. And first of all, to think about the implications of a lack of total commitment, we can look at James 1:8 in the Amplified Bible. It reads, "A man of two minds is unstable, is unreliable and uncertain about everything he thinks, feels, and decides." Wow. Everything he thinks, feels, and decides is unstable. That is the end of what it means to operate with a lack of commitment. On the other hand, let's see what total commitment would do. In Matthew 13:45 and 46, the scripture's talking about the kingdom of heaven, and it reads, "The kingdom of heaven is like a man who is a merchant seeking fine pearls, who having found one pearl of great price, went out and sold all that he had, and he bought it." Sold all that he had. He was sold out. He was all in. He knew the value of this pearl, and he gave up everything in order to purchase it. And you know, Jesus did that for us. He first loved us. He gave up his very life to purchase our eternity with him, to purchase our relationship with him, to purchase our future in glory with him, to purchase his bride. And because he first loved us, we too can respond and love him and love others as well, out of that impetus that he brought. This parable is about recognizing the value of a treasure found. Not just any treasure, but the big one, the big treasure. We're all looking for the big treasure. How many of us have gone to get a lottery ticket to possibly get a hold of the big treasure? But the big treasure doesn't have to do with money. It doesn't have to do with position or fame. What the Bible teaches, and the truth is that the big treasure is relationship with Jesus, is relationship with God, and following hard after them. I don't know if you guys watch much television, but there's a couple of shows that have been pretty popular lately, and one of them's called American Pickers. We live in Iowa right now, and these guys happen to be from Iowa. And they go around to barns and old houses, and they look for treasure that's buried under rust and dirt. They dig through stuff to find something that's of great value, and then they purchase that. There's another show called Pawn Stars, and it's actually a show about people that own a pawn shop, and people bring stuff in to the pawn shop to try to sell it to them, and the pawn shop owners try to determine the value of whatever it is that they bring in. And the funny thing is that many times there's hidden value. There's things that might not be apparent on the surface that are of great value. And both of those shows sort of reflect that. And the thing that's so awesome about the heart of God is that He was able to see through the mud and the dirt and the rust and all the stuff that covered up who we really are. And He was able to treasure us and love us and pick us and select us and dust us off and clean us up and set us on a pedestal and tell us that of His great love for us. And because He first did that for us, we are called as well to do that with other people, to find those people that might be hidden among a bunch of junk, to find those people that it might not be apparent on the surface, the treasure that's living within them. But they are the created of God with a plan and a purpose that God had for them. And we are called, as we love Jesus, to love others. In fact, when they tried to trick Jesus, they asked Jesus, what's the greatest commandment of all? Jesus said, love your God with your whole heart. And He said, love your neighbor as yourself. The second command is as the first. And that's how important it is for us to understand this concept of treasure and how God found us. And because He demonstrated that grace to us, we as well are to demonstrate that type of grace, that all-in grace, that love right where you're at grace to others as well, right where they're at. It's very, very, very important that we understand that concept. And the path to Christian leadership and development, to discipleship, to servanthood, all those things is basically can be described with a definition that just says leadership, servanthood is about simply loving those passionately that God has brought in your life to love, and taking leadership in order to fulfill the needs of those people, just as God has fulfilled our needs for love and acceptance and provision as well. Now, what distinguishes a full throttle Christian? One who's got it all going on, one who's sold out for Christ, one that's moving at 100 miles an hour. What distinguishes a full throttle Christian? First of all, trust. The simple fact is that in order to obey anyone, you have to trust them. In order to do what they ask you to do, you have to believe that their motive is for you, that they're with you. And so trust. You have to trust God with your whole heart. The second requirement for a full throttle Christian is death. John says that he died in 1963. He died to his way, to his agenda, to what he thought was right. We talk about our rights, and they're so important, our individual rights in our culture, in our Western society, in the United States. But as a citizen of a greater kingdom, as a citizen of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, we give up our rights in order to participate in a perfect, loving, kind, gentle God's directives for our life. This brings brokenness and humility, which are two key ingredients for us to be used of God. It enables us to be sensitive to the needs of others and to meet others where they're at. And then the third requirement that distinguishes a full throttle Christian is resurrection. After we have trusted God and made a decision that He is trustworthy, that He is for us, that He loves us, and we're going to give our all to Him. After we've died to our own agenda, to our own purposes for a greater cause, the cause of Christ, we become resurrected into the people that God is calling us to be, into the bride of Christ, which the Word says that He's bringing forth without stain or blemish. We become instruments of God's grace to the world around us. We are actually reborn, having Jesus and His purpose actually formed deep within us. It's very, very key to understand what it means to be obedient, what it means to fully love. And sometimes we don't have that modeled in our world. Many of us have had parents or family situations that we haven't had modeled real love and complete obedience because they haven't been trustworthy situations. But God is trustworthy. He wants to be the Father that some of us never had. He wants to demonstrate over and over and over again His great faithfulness and trustworthiness. And I'd like to tell you the story to illustrate that today of two dogs, Lily and Meredith. Lily and Meredith were two dogs that I actually found in the humane shelter, in the animal shelter. I had a thing where I would take kids to the animal shelter, and we would take dogs out and play with them and get them reacclimated to human beings so that when families came to visit the dogs, they wouldn't be quite so excited and would be more adoptable. So I would take kids there in order to do that periodically. And one day I went and I saw two little golden retriever puppies. I just immediately fell in love with one of them, and then decided to try to go home and talk my wife into being in love with that puppy as well. And so I took her to the animal shelter, and the whole time she's going, "Oh no, I can't believe you're talking me into this. No, no, no." We went in and actually brought both puppies into the room. They were sisters, actually. The one that I had initially picked, and then there was the other one. And it was amazing because Jan, who was completely against getting one dog, by the time we were in that room with both dogs, said, "I think we should leave with both." And she actually fell so in love with these dogs that she left. She decided that we could have both. So we adopted them and brought them home, and we named them Lily and Meredith. And I want to introduce you to Lily, by the way. Lily, come here. Come on. Come on. Come see me. Come on. Now, Lily lives to love me. If I'm in a room, she's in that room. If I'm facing one direction, she's facing me or facing that direction. She is absolutely, totally obedient. And she loves me so unconditionally, and she just lives to express that love to me. She does all those things that just really, really make me love her back. And I so have been blessed with Lily in my life. Okay, go on back. And in telling you the story of Meredith and Lily, Meredith was actually the one that I first picked out. And Meredith was smart. But Meredith would think about what we asked her to do, and she would make a determination as to whether she really wanted to do that or not. She would many times lead Lily into things, adventures like breaking out of the fence and going down the street and those types of things. She was not really bonding with us. She was bonding more with Lily than she was with us. Meredith was the one that had all the promise to begin with, the one that I thought would be the best dog. But you know what we found out? That Lily was the one for us. We had a family that we knew that needed a dog as well, with children, and they were always very complimentary of Meredith and Lily. So we ended up actually giving Meredith to that family, and we kept Lily. But you know what? Lily totally loved us. Lily was totally attentive to us. Lily would give her life for us. And you know what? Even though Meredith initially looked like she had more, quote, talent, even though she was, initially more responsive, in the long run, Lily turned out to be the dog for us. Why? Because she was totally devoted to us. She loved us with her whole heart. She waited eagerly for any instruction from us to quickly obey. And you know what? I can't help, I'm a little weird about my love for my dog because of that. I love her so much. She's so encouraging to me. Every morning when I wake up, she greets me. Every time when I come home from work, she's there. And I've fallen in love with my dog because of her great obedience and love for me. And the same with God for us. When we obey Him, when we're responsive to His directives, when our total focus is Him, when our eyes follow Him no matter where He's going and what He's doing to join Him in what He's doing, then He can't help but just desperately love us as well. I can't go in a room without Lily trying to get up underneath my feet. She wants to be right there with me. And God has given her to me to remind me that I am to be the same way with God and to do the same thing with Him. I don't know if you remember the movie City Slickers, but Jack Palance said in the movie, there's one thing that's important, just one thing. And it was up to people to decide what that one thing was. There's another movie, actually it was a TV show that I used to love, and this may be dating me. Some of you may not know the show, but it's called Mission Impossible. And at the beginning of the TV show, there was an actual tape recorder, and it would tell the spy, the agent there, what his assignment was. It would say, you're to do this and this and this. And it would say, should you choose to accept this assignment, this and this and this will happen. And it said, this tape will self-destruct. I don't know if you remember that. But I think about that movie and that TV show. And I want to ask today, what is the one thing? If you want to be a full throttle Christian, you have to determine what is the one thing that you're going to live for. You have to focus on that. What is the one thing you're going to go all out for? And I want to tell you, should you choose to accept this assignment, your life will never be the same. You'll experience the kingdom coming in you and through you. Jesus will become formed in you. And the cause that you live for will make all the difference in your life and the life of people that you're called to love, people that you're called in relationship to. So, be a full throttle Christian.
To connect with Pastor Mike, you can email him at pastormikelauderdale@gmail.com, find him on Facebook, or read his prayer blog at pastormikelauderdale.blogspot.com.